Hello, this is Chevron 7 Locked, a podcast where two fans revisit the Stargate franchise in order. But today proves that it's not necessarily in release order, because we're leaping far ahead to the most recently produced Stargate production. It's the 2018 web series Stargate Origins, a story that went full Phantom Menace and told us that things were connected in ways that we hadn't really considered. I'm Rob Harvey, and joining me today
is Aaron Percival.
Hi, Aaron. So, you doing okay?
Yes, thank you. You know what? I've just finished rereading the Apocalypse trilogy that Fandemonium put out. One of their sort of like last hurrahs before they stopped publishing Stargate novels. So I've been in I continue to be in a Stargate mood as always.
Is that like a crossover with different shows?
It was a parallel alternate timeline trilogy that they did, which was the conceit was, what if Jack O'Neill never made it back in time for the Shades of Grey episode where he discovers the Rogue NID operation and he infiltrates it and saves all our relationships with like the Asgard and the Tolan. And the conceit was he never made it back in time. He was flung off into the far future, and he arrived in a future where the Gould had come and invaded Earth, and then the Wraith had showed up as well in the Milky Way, you know, set in like 2060 something or something like that. And then it's all about them dealing with that and fixing the timeline. And it was a whole three book arc about it, which Fandemonium didn't do enough of. You know, they did a couple of like two book sort of like mini stories, but this was their biggest SG1 one. But they did not a virtual. That's a wrong term to use. They did a season 6 and 7 for Atlantis in book form, which was their biggest original stuff.
Okay, so was this a complete what if scenario, or was there something in the story that made it diverge?
It was addressed in the story.
Okay.
It was deliberate sabotage of the events of that little run, that little
Interesting
thing.
Okay.
I do love me some Fandemonium Stargate books.
That's cool.
How are you? What have you been up to?
Not bad, thanks. Just melting in the heat, trying to stay alive.
As of recording, it is that time of year where the UK and the residents of the UK cannot deal with the heat that the Americans go through regularly. And we sit there and cry. I have the fan on right now. I've been crying for the last 3 days.
But they're used to it.
Exactly. And to be fair, we're more humid here, which makes it worse.
They've got aircon. Our houses just aren't built for that. We're built to hold the heat in.
Yes, we're built to trap the heat for the crappy winters, and the damn summers are now getting unbearable.
So with Stargate Origins, is it fair to call this a web series? I guess one version of it's a feature length.
I think you could call it a web series and a film, depending on how you watch it. You know, if you want to watch it with the Batman style transitions, then it's a web series. If you want to watch it all in one go, it's a feature film.
Yeah, I watched both. I watched the feature length version, Catherine, last month. So, and then as a revision for this, I watched the episodic version. And I was watching on MGM Plus, and then it all of a sudden said yesterday it was leaving in 7 days. And that got me thinking, like, how long are these things going to be available?
And that is an ever-present question at the minute in terms of like these streaming releases. I have been wondering for 8 years about purchasing this thing that I don't like that much, but would purchase anyway just to ensure it's on my shelf. I brought the film on Amazon, I think. So again, I don't own it. I don't really own it at the end of the day. But, I mean, if it came out, would you buy it?
I guess so. Once upon a time, I would have when I was a completist. But no.
But not now.
I don't know. I'm a big advocate for physical releases, but I don't go over the top now. Yeah, I'm running out of space.
That is a problem. I would buy it because I never know, when I might be in the mood for some self-punishment.
Interesting. I kind of had the impression that maybe you really liked this, and maybe I didn't. And I think I might quite like it. I think.
Well,
So I got to episode 5, and I was like, I stopped hating it all of a sudden, and I just kind of got stuck into it. But we'll get to that. See how I feel at the end of this discussion.
That's fair.
Before we dive deep into Stargate Origins, I thought we could look back at the origins of Stargate Origins. So this came about in an app called Stargate Command, and it launched in 2017. It was an official hub for all things Stargate. It featured community message boards, news, articles, photos, quizzes, and for a fee, you could watch the movie, watch the series, and then get these new exclusive episodes as well. Is that something you experienced at the time?
I wish I'd have thought about this and got my patch. I subscribed to Stargate Command like the day it went live, and they sent out like these little founding member patches that you could sew onto your uniform or your nerd jacket or whatever you were doing. And I absolutely, day one, I was like, right, it was silly, really, as a financial model, because it was like £8 for lifetime access.
It was expensive. You'd pay less for a regular streaming service now that does include all Stargate,
but lifetime access. It was a one-off payment, and as a fan, I just had access to that for, in theory, lifetime. And then the app was shut down after like 2 or 3 years.
Oh, that's the thing about lifetime access. I think, going off on a different topic, looking back at Stargate Worlds, which was an MO that was due to come out, they probably would have offered a lifetime model, and I would have bought it, because I remember at the time, well, maybe it was a few years later, I got Star Trek Online, and I got the lifetime sub for that.
I didn't even know that was a thing for MMOs.
Really?
I don't play them. I do play. Well, I did. I briefly tried Star Trek Online, but I didn't pay for a single thing. I just did all the free stuff. I never brought anything. And
initially it wasn't free. So
was it not?
No, I didn't want to pay. Well, I would have paid the monthlies, but my wife surprised me and got me a lifetime membership. Because at the time, me and my wife were both paying for World of Warcraft, which was probably about £15 each, give or take, a month.
Did that have a lifetime access?
World of Warcraft? No.
Okay.
No.
So it was unusual for Star Trek to have one?
I don't know. There's a whole thing about the appeal of things like this, which I might get onto in a moment. So the platform announced it was closing the back end of 2019. I actually looked through my emails to find the closure notice for this.
So you had it as well?
Briefly, I didn't. I wasn't day one like you. I just dipped in and had a look. And the closure notice says, these past 2 years have been a joy for us to interact with you on Stargate Command. We've enjoyed our chats with you in the forums, reading your feedback, and most of all, spending time with you at the cons around the world. We've learned that while you've supported the platform and mission, you prefer to engage with the franchise and fellow fans on communities where you already are, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. As a result, we've elected to end the Stargate Command service in December 2019, and the Stargate Command service will be discontinued and all accounts closed. We'll be transitioning some Stargate Command content to YouTube, so I guess some have been archived there.
That was all the interviews and stuff that they were doing.
Okay. So the reasons they've explained for the app's closure points to an interesting issue, one that I'd like to put to you. What do you think about like the sustainability and limited appeal of fan communities that are on platforms other than social media? Because with social media, it's so easy to go on and join a fan group.
And make a fan group.
But if you go onto another platform, there's another degree of separation where you have to go on there, access it, and maybe feel out of your depth. What's your opinions on that?
I don't disagree. You know, I am of an age of mail groups. I'm of an age of bulletin boards / forums. You know, I probably said on the first episode, you know, I was signed up to Gateworld. Still am signed up to Gateworld, but Gateworld is a shadow of its former self. How much of that is this is the activity on the message boards, should I clarify? Obviously, they're still cracking out content and stuff that's good. But the forums are a lot quieter. Is this a lack of Stargate content to talk about? Or is this a change in online fandom behavior? Obviously, I run Alien versus Predator Galaxy, and we still operate a message boards that is not dead, thank God. And how much of that is due to the age of the people that come there? Is it still because it's people my age who grew up with that who are there, but we still see regular new people show up as well? It is probably a lot to do with the content. You know, I'm kind of curious to see how active the Gateworld boards get once Stargate Prime, Stargate UK, whatever it ends up being called, comes out. But there is no question in my mind that it is so much simpler for people to just join a Facebook group. You know, I'd said a long time ago, you know, Facebook is the internet. You know, it's the place where you can easily just go on and find all your content. You can find all your social groups, your fandom groups, and everything like that. And it's sort of become this one-stop place for everything. And as a fandom, yeah, of course, I'm in like 4 or 5 different Stargate groups on Facebook because that's where the activity is. That's where I'm going to see the news first. How about yourself?
Well, I guess we're all biased with which social medias we like and dislike. With Facebook, I definitely join groups, but I don't engage as much. I see a lot of the passion there of the fans, but people seem to have a lot of thoughts and insight into stuff I've already thought about, or maybe they haven't quite done the research when they post things. There's a lot of repetition, or sometimes the facts are wrong. So for those reasons, I find it hard to engage on social media.
That's fair. You know, again, just to go to the content, you know, is it a cyclical discussion based on the fact that there's nothing new to talk about? Or is it cyclical because new people find the franchise, then want to engage with other fans and have the same questions that maybe you had 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, and that's why it comes up. And on the one hand, I can see it being like, yeah, that's kind of boring. I've already thought about this. We've already talked about this ad nauseum. And then on the other hand, it's like, is it re-engaging people? Is it then causing perhaps other newer people to see this for the first time? And is it just long-term jadedness?
Well, yeah, it's a tricky one to answer. Maybe the community wasn't like, it couldn't have succeeded that well when the show was off the air.
But then for a long time, we had the books. You know, we had some of the Big Finish stuff coming out. And you start to learn, well, there was going to be the reboot movies as well. So there was always a little bit of stuff that was there. But then, yeah, it's just been a proper drought lately, especially between Origins and now. You know, 8 years of nothing.
Before we move on to the story, I thought we could look at a brief history of Catherine Langford and the history of the Stargate on Earth, just so we can get a picture of when this is set and what happens afterwards. So, in the early 1900s, the DHD was discovered in Giza and moved to Germany, so it wasn't present in the movie, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So the gate was discovered in 1928, and then this takes us to Stargate Origins. It says 10 years later, but it's actually set in 1939, so a little bit over 10 years. And in 1939, Catherine travels through the gate to Abydos, but of course her memory's wiped. Also in 1939, the gate transported across the Atlantic on the Achilles that we see in Continuum.
Mm-hmm.
Mid-1940s, the DHD is acquired by the Soviet Union. 1945, Catherine's told that her fiancé, Ernest Littlefield, has died in an accident, but he's actually travelled through the gate and has become stranded. In 1969, Catherine receives a visit from a future Daniel Jackson and Samantha Carter, with Daniel posing as the son of Heinrich Gruber, but he wasn't present in this story, was he?
Yeah, is he the one that had gone to Germany to try and get more funds?
No, that's Dietrich or someone else. Then next time we see Catherine is in 1994, or if we go by the SG-1 continuity, 1996. And then Catherine would die in 2005, as mentioned in Moby's Part 1.
Okay. I'm just looking up the mission files at the minute.
Okay, look at the very, very, very last paragraph. I'm sure it mentions them both.
So to page 60. You are correct. That is the literal only mention of him in the mission files. So it ends with, having gained assurances from Captain Mitchell's men that their belongings would be handled with the utmost care during their loading onto the Achilles, all that was left was for Catherine and the Professor to say their goodbyes and look forward to a new future. While she wasn't sure what the future might hold, she sensed there was adventure and intrigue on the horizon. She also had a curious feeling at the heart of all this would be that the beautiful ringed relic, which, just like her father's colleagues, Dietrich and Herr Gruber, had become as much a part of the Langford family as anybody who actually bore the name. That is the literal only mention of Gruber in the files, according to, Control and F.
Mm-hmm. Maybe they neglected to put him in the story because they hadn't thought. And then when they did the mission files, they thought, oh shit, let's mention him there.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me given the content of the rest of the mission files, which we should, of course, talk about at some point through this, and the way that was integrated into the narrative of this little project.
So do you want to explain what the mission files is? Okay. Because that's something you shared with me.
So as they were releasing the web series, they also released like little ancillary materials known as the mission files on the Stargate Command app, and it was essentially a bunch of extra context of what was happening on the show. It was a summary of the events of the episode, and then just a bunch of fleshing out of details of what wasn't on the screen.
I was really surprised how much more details were there. I thought it would just be basically a transcript of the story, but no.
It's a whole other story. Like, the details in this just paint a completely different depth to what's going on.
Yeah. Like, without reading the mission files, had you assumed the Harcesis was Ra's child?
Well, it wasn't Ra's child. I thought it was Osiris and Isis.
It is, but that's not mentioned on screen, is it?
No, it's in the it's in the
mission files. But until I read the mission files, I wasn't aware of this.
No, me either.
I was thinking, so it must be Ra's child. So I was trying to work out a date from conception, looking at the age of the child, thinking when Ra was there last, and then no, it wasn't even Ra.
You wouldn't even know it was Osiris and Isis.
No,
because our set is a clone of Isis. How the fuck did that?
So Isis was working on kind of cloning as a failsafe, just like Baal. And am I right in thinking that Ra killed Isis, but not the clone?
So we're fast forward into about season 5 of SG-1 here. So Osiris and Isis and Seth
yeah.
were rebelled against Ra. Seth escaped, and Osiris and Isis were removed from their hosts, placed in canopic jars, and Isis's canopic jar was damaged, so the symbiote died. Osiris survived and then took Sarah Gardner as a host, and then that's where we had her for about 2 seasons as one of the major bad guys. So Ra removed them and exiled them and punished them by putting them in storage for thousands of years.
So Aset is basically just what the Baal clones were, yeah?
She was a clone. Yeah, she was a clone of Isis.
Yeah.
Although looking at just doing a Google now, Aset. They pronounce it Auset in the show, but it's spelled Aset. Is the authentic Egyptian name, apparently. At least according to Google AI's overview here, apparently Isis is her Greek name.
Okay. I
did not know that. So it is in there, but it's it's not really in there. The hints there, but you would have no idea of all this backstory unless you were reading the mission files.
And essentially, she impregnated herself using DNA from
Osiris to create a Harcesis of her and
it's very complicated for something that's not on screen.
Exactly. And this is just because they wanted the director, Morgan, Mercedes Bryce Morgan, liked the visual of the bad guy holding a baby.
I feel like you have to assume Ra's the father, going by just what's on screen, yeah?
I didn't. Because it's just so forbidden, in the Gould culture. And you kind of see that in, I think there was one scene where Serket's like, how dare you flaunt that abomination around here and all that kind of stuff. It's a concept I love. Like, I really like the Harcesis. Once, I can't remember the Harcesis' name.
In this?
No, in SG-1.
Oh.
I can't remember the Harcesis' name off the top of my head, but once he ascends and gives Daniel his vision of what he would be like, it would be like with all this knowledge, and get the episode's absolute power. That's it. It's a concept. It's gone from the show, and it was cool to see it back purely because I like the concept. But the short stories did something with the Tok'ra, actually, with the Harcesis in Fandemonian's anthologies, and it was Selmak and another Tok'ra had this child, and it was a human with the knowledge of the two Gould. Of course it is, because that's what happens. And I was like, you know what? That'd be really awesome if they'd have branched out and maybe done that as a way to continue the Tok'ra culture in the actual canon.
Well, yeah, I guess they would have preserved the knowledge, and then any future Tok'ra hosts could then get that knowledge back.
Yeah, or even if the symbiotes are dying, they still retain all that knowledge. So the culture of the Tok'ra continues, even if the parasitic form of the Gould of the Tok'ra does not. The only other thing I sort of put in there. So my note says, I love the Harcesis showing back up, but what's the relevance to the plot? ? Other than another reason for her to fear Ra, Ra discovering. But then I'd also put a note of, but it does kind of tie into Paul Langford's pleas for Auset to release Catherine, because, then there's that little bit of, you fear for your child, I fear for my child kind of thing. But yeah, other than that I don't know if that was me grasping at straws, but other than that, there's literally no point for the Harcesis in the show, the film, whatever you want to call it.
Aside from maybe that parallel with Langford and Catherine, father and daughter, you could include it to show how human she is, and she's quite caring for the Abydonians as well.
True.
Yeah.
She was very much portrayed as not your typical power mad Gould. And again, the mission files go into it in much more detail, where apparently she was this tinkerer. She liked to experiment with technologies, like to make new technologies, and of course this whole biological failsafe aspect that she was going for with the clones. But again, you wouldn't really know that. It's not unprecedented, of course, because in the show, we see him being much more diplomatic, less of a warfare kind of guy. We see Nerus as well, who's not quite as obsessed with your tradition.
It was actually Nerus and Baal who I thought of when we see Asset, because they're two like radical examples of Gould that aren't Gould.
Yeah,
don't have all the archetypes,
which was a nice change of pace. But this is a whole other story that does not exist on the screen.
We haven't even mentioned the main story yet.
Would you like to? Sorry, we've already deviated.
Go on, then. I'll give a quick summary of episode 1. 1 of 10. So, 10 years since the gate was uncovered, Professor Paul Langford and his daughter Catherine have made little to no progress discovering the secrets or the purpose of the gate. With the global landscape on the verge of war, they're unable to get any more funding for their research. But things get worse when chief Nazi occultist Willem Brooker arrives. Why don't we talk about the opening scene from the movie? So we go to Giza 1928, and we get this repeat of the opening from the movie, of course. With a key difference, we get Connor Trinier dubbing the voice for Catherine's father.
That was so weird.
Instead of Katerina come, we have him saying Catherine come. And now in an American English accent, and more confusion to the nationality and stuff like that.
That was so weird to me, because in my head it is just so embedded as Katharina come, and it's a small thing. Of course, it's a small thing. It's a nitpick thing of two fans who have spent 20 something years watching that one interpretation of it, but from a internal logic point of view of Origins, I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. You need to do this because you need to establish Connor Trinier and his voice as Paul Langford for this next, hour and 20 minutes or whatever of my life, hour and 40 minutes.
It still bugs me as much as Boba Fett's voice being dubbed bugs me in the originals.
But how awesome is it having Connor Trinier back?
Yes. It's pretty cool.
I think he needed pay for this. I love Connor Trinier. I'm a Trekkie. I grew up on Star Trek. I absolutely adore Trip as a character, and I adore Connor Trinier as an actor in that show. If I was to have ever had kids, I was going to name it Ian.
Yes,
this theoretical kid, Ian. So I could call him Trip, because he would be the third Ian in my family in a row.
Interesting.
It's purely because of Trip from Star Trek. But to keep on Stargate, Connor was the actor who portrayed Michael in Atlantis. And Michael, his introductory episode is one of my favorite episodes of Stargate, full stop.
Me and my wife can't help but joke and laugh every time we watch that episode, because not only did Beckett's retrovirus turn him into a human, it turned him into a Texan.
with the accent and everything. Yeah.
Even referenced on screen, because Taylor's like, "You're from Texas."
Brilliant. But if Beckett's retrovirus is going to turn any wraith into anybody, I'm quite happy it turned him into a Connor Trinier. I do think they wasted Michael as the character went on, though. I didn't like how the arc was ultimately finished. But that first episode, one of my favorite episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hard watching the final. Is it? These are the voyages, or what's the final episode?
Of Enterprise, yeah. These are the voyages. One of the worst episodes of Star Trek ever.
Mm-hmm. Like, I get what some people say. It should have been, having it been a holodeck program. It should have been a side episode, maybe.
You'll get me raging on that though. Let's skip. Let's skip that.
So having the full scene of Giza 1928, it's the first time we've had a full scene from the film transferred and put into the TV show. Just for fun, can you recall every time the series has used a shot from the film?
Ra's ship landing was used in Politics.
Mm-hmm. There's some obvious ones.
Is there? Well, it wouldn't be the Stargate in use because it's an entirely different prop. Oh, did Secrets use one of the establishing shots of the city?
Oh, I'm not sure about that, actually. Well, what I was going for was opening title, wormhole.
Yeah, of course, the fucking wormhole. They didn't recreate that.
The Hatak in Politics. And maybe some glider shots in Children of the Gods, or was that original models?
No, that was brand new because they're not open. It's not an open cockpit in
got you.
In Children of the Gods.
So it's rare that we've actually had bits from the movie. That bit from Politics being the main one, probably.
I don't think the opening is the movie opening though. It looks entirely different. Lighting. I wonder if they just attempted to recreate it.
I don't know. I feel like it's that whole motion capture shot sped up. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I think the show's a lot brighter. Whether they just adjusted the color grading. Yeah, that's something we can ask the Facebook groups.
Okay. So 10 years later, we're reintroduced to the gate. I don't know if they did this for scene-to-scene continuity, but we get some interesting details on the gate. We get the top chevron, which is unique. It matches the movie. Do you like the inclusion of that?
I really liked the idea to recreate the movie gate. I appreciate the movie in so much, and I kind of like the differences between the two, but I like them both. I like both interpretations of the gate quite a lot. So a little bit of the guy in me who really appreciates the movie was like, that's nice to actually see some love shown to the movie interpretation. But the prop was not great in Origins. Great. Like, for a lot of the early shots of it, it didn't look like there was even any symbols on the Stargate. But they were just really not well defined. You know, the detail did not appear on the screen, full stop.
No. So the symbols in the movie, I think they kind of
engraved.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're engraved.
The ones in the series extrude. That's a key difference. But the ones in this, they stuck out, but they were flat, which really didn't define them much. And of course, the color was just off in detail.
Yeah, it was a lot darker, wasn't it?
But we did get the funnel though at the back.
Yes, which was nice. I don't think we ever saw that in the show.
Well, we saw it once with the black hole, but that
yes, you're right. Yeah. But like, it's kind of implied to exist in the show sometimes. You know, with like when the wormhole. The unstable vortex creates a cavern or something like that, because you've got solitudes where you kind of got like some stuff behind the gate. And
I wasn't sure if solitudes was a mistake and they made the cavern from the Kawoosh but on the wrong side.
Maybe.
I don't know. We'll not mention that.
That was a nice little callback. I appreciated that, even if the effect was ropey. The callback to the Jeeps was cool.
Yes. So in the script that you provided me, and then possibly in the mission files, it says that the Nazis wheeled in a generator. And the show really doesn't put emphasis on that. It puts more emphasis on the fact that they're accelerating the car and there's a battery in the car. So I don't know what the shift was there.
I mean, 1969 kind of makes it so they don't need it. You know, it's established in the law that the Jeeps. But then again, I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know the difference between the batteries of a 1940s, 1939 Jeep and an Army Jeep from 1969. I don't know if there's a difference in power there. But
I think they'll still need an alternator, which asks another question, because in The Torment on Tantalus, Catherine states that, well, she suggests that the gate needs a direct current, not an alternating current.
Yeah. So does a Jeep use AC? I don't know.
Do you think that was subconscious from this?
What do you mean?
Like the fact that the gate needed a certain kind of current was imposed on it from Asset and from doing this in the car? I don't know.
All that. We'll get to that later. I didn't really think about that sort of bit. The bit that stood out to me was the flimsy ass looking prop where they were using the clamp, the little wimpy coils around the bolts on the battery to hook it back up to the Stargate. I was like, that looks terrible. You know, at least use some clamps or something to make it look a bit more heavy duty, because this looks pathetic. I didn't like that bit.
No. So what did you think of the Nazis? Of course, we had Willem Brooker. He was accompanied by Eva Reinhardt, the documentary filmmaker. Heinrich, he was the one who stayed behind. Weirdly, he was caught wearing Catherine's underwear. Later, she steals his pants, so she gets a bit of revenge there.
What a weird and out of touch gag for that.
I feel like just having the Nazis and their ego and incompetence was enough. We don't need another level of humor there.
Yeah. Like, I appreciated the attempts at humor in this show. You know, for a lot of people, myself included, a large part of the appeal of SG-1 was the humor. It was funny. It was the character. It was the light-hearted nature of it. You know, when Universe rolled around, one of the critiques of it is it's too dark. It's too serious. This is Battlestar in a Stargate dressing. It's not what I enjoyed from SG-1. And to be fair, Atlantis took that turn first. Atlantis was a much darker show than SG-1. You know, they were executing prisoners of war in season 1. They were performing experiments on them. You know, Atlantis started that turn. Still had its humor though, but the humor is a huge part of the appeal of Stargate as a franchise. So, in general, I really appreciated the attempts in Origins. But good God, it was so ham-fisted and slapstick in what they were doing. You know, so much of Origins is, I appreciate the attempt. I like the concept, but execution falls so flat for me throughout the show, and the humor. The humor was a part of that. You know, especially the wearing the ladies' underpants and the cross-dressing gag. And I think that guy was it Gunter was the guy who stayed behind.
Well, no, Gunter was one of the co-writers of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention.
He dies.
It's Heinrich. It's Heinrich.
Yeah, Heinrich.
Yeah.
Heinrich's the only guy who doesn't have a wiki page.
I mean, how much can you say about Heinrich?
The less said, the better. And we also have Stefan, one of Brooker's men, and he would die later at the outpost. Though.
Well, he was executed later at the outpost. I also wanted to mention, I love the sideways shots of the Stargate in the I don't know. It'd be the second episode when they open the gate. I didn't go back and rewatch it in episodic format. I saw it the once when it came out on Stargate Command as episodes. Every time I've watched it since, which has been maybe 3. I've maybe seen Origins 4 times in total. Once as a show, 3 as a movie. So I've just watched. When I watched it, the prep for this, it was in the movie format. So
supposedly the effects were slightly improved for the feature length.
Supposedly, I couldn't. I wouldn't remember because the effects are still ropey.
Yeah. Shall we move on to episode 2? So Brooker proves his theories are correct when he opens the Stargate. He takes Paul Langford hostage through the gate, leaving Catherine captive until she escapes and seeks out the help of James Beale and Wasif. So, yeah, the Nazis manually dialed the gate. I think we mentioned that just before, jumping ahead of ourselves. But that pretty much sums up this whole little episode. It's just the Nazis dialing the gate. But then, of course, Catherine goes to see James Beale, who we haven't actually mentioned yet. Are you not a big fan, I think you mentioned, of romance in stories?
No. I can't remember if we talked about romantic stuff in the other episode. I'm not a fan of romance that doesn't feel earned, or I don't like sped up romance, perhaps. It's probably more him taking a blast in the back for her, having known her for a day, 2 days, however long they've been. It's that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like disingenuous kind of stuff like that.
So moving on to episode 3, with the help of Captain James Beale and Wasif, Catherine manages to manually redial the gate and pursue Brooker. Meanwhile, Professor Langford and the Nazis arrive on Abydos, where they face the Gould asset. So, Langford and the Nazis arrive in the temple on Abydos. Not the same location as the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Not explained straight away, though. Do you remember your initial thoughts?
Throughout a lot of this, I tried to not get fanboy ragey at the differences, the inconsistencies, in quotation mark, between the film and this series, because it was made pretty clear that something was going to be done to deal with all the, the stuff that shouldn't happen in the film, in Origins. So I think through a lot of that, I was trying to rein it in and not get fanboy angry early on, because it's like, give it a go, let it finish telling its story, let it see if it rectifies this quotation marks issue kind of thing. So I think with the temple, I was very much like, no, don't let it bother you now. Set wise, it was okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. One bizarre but interesting thing, we see 3 moons in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the Stargate movie, we have 3 moons above the pyramid. Mm-hmm. If you don't look too closely, but if you do, you'll realize it's the same picture. It's Earth's moon, positioned, slightly rotated here and there. It's the same moon 3 times over. It's our moon.
Mm-hmm.
Origins does the same thing. It's like they're being faithful to the movie, but it to a weird extent.
Which is weird because of how much the mission files tie into the wider lore, and then how the film, how Origin ends with this book note of what it does. This whole now go set up the show kind of thing to the last 5 minutes or whatever it is of it. So you spend a good chunk of the start of the show, of the start of Origins, being, this is a really good sort of continuation. I say that in quotation marks, really good. This is an interesting continuation of the movie, and how much they sort of like trying to tie into that aesthetic, for them to just also completely whole hog the wider SG-1 lore of it all.
Mm-hmm. It almost starts off a bit ambiguous, like which universe is this set in, one or the other, but definitely the series, yeah. Or maybe its own. its own continuity.
I mean, we have the quantum mirror, Rob. So Stargate has that inbuilt tool for alternate universe.
Maybe a good version of Origins happened in SG-1.
No version of Origins happened in SG-1.
You know what I was thinking? This might have made an interesting book. The concept. Maybe done a bit better. You know, having a story that is fits in a certain place and timeline. You know what? Well, it's not the same, but I was thinking of Alien Out of the Shadows, how people have a love-hate thing with that, where they've said there's this story that takes place between Alien and aliens. Ripley's went through all these events, then she gets her memories wiped. The whole story with Out of the Shadows, it's not airtight. There's some issues with it. But as harmless as it is as a book, it's interesting. I thought maybe this could have done the same.
The thing with both of these is, so Out of the Shadows and Origins, they are completely unnecessary. Yes, they might fit because they do a stupid mind wipe, but they are unnecessary stories that don't add anything. Yes, the end of the Origins is, yes, Catherine Outset planted this all in Catherine's mind to go and kick off the events of SG-1. But that takes away from SG-1. That takes away from the film. That takes away from Catherine.
Absolutely.
Out of the Shadows at least has Tim Leben writing it. That book is good in spite of that conceit. You know, Tim Leben is a good horror writer. I would have been happy without either of these. They wasted the concept.
A bit of a gimmick.
There was plans for them to do, if this had succeeded, for them to do like stuff around Tilk and Braytak, you know, like prequel Stargate Origins about their characters, which would have had far more space to exist in the franchise than Origins Catherine does. I really like Threshold, the episode, you know, I think it's the second one of season 5 where Tilk's brainwashed and they're trying to convince him or remind him, you know, of who he is. And I really liked that, the flashbacks to when Tilk was a youngster and, you know, he was learning about the truth of the Gould, and you got to see him in the past serving Apophis as a Royal Guard, not a First Prime kind of thing.
I actually put that in my notes for tonight as well, because that pinpoints a certain moment in time where Ra was fighting Apophis's forces.
Yes, yeah.
So that's something Ra could have been doing, yeah.
I would have much preferred that intent of that background between those two. It would have had far more room to exist and tell a story that was not ham-fisted. And the sad thing is, this wasn't like... So Origins was directed by Mercedes Bryce Morgan and written by Justin Michael Terry and Mark Ilvedson. The concept, the prequel element, was predetermined before those guys signed on. It was a directive from MGM, you are going to tell a prequel story with Catherine Langford. Why they settled on that one, why they went down that route, I don't know.
Odd. Okay, here's a discussion point. Gould eyes. What do you think of the contacts?
They confused me to hell to start with, because I thought the contacts were supposed to be this show's interpretation of the eye glow, you know, something like that, which caused me some confusion with both, not with both, with Sir Cat, you know, the other villainess of the series, because I was like, oh, is she Gould? But then again, reading the mission files, they say that they are eye implants that Outset created. And not intended to be the Gould eye flash.
That's weird. I took it as their version of the eye flash. Like saves them on an effect, so let's just put contacts in, yeah. And
they were cool contacts, you know. I would not have been opposed to them being a reinterpretation of the eye flash. It wouldn't have bothered me, because I accept this as this other weird thing with its own interpretations that doesn't quite fit neatly into the wider lore. You know what? Well, I know we've moved on a little bit from it, but the callbacks to the OG film, I liked them having ice on them when they came through the Stargate. You know, it is kind of addressed in the show
because of stellar drift or homemade sound device, maybe.
Yeah, it was Red Sky dealt with it. I can't remember the exact reason, but I think it was something to do with. I don't think they talked about the ice so much as them tumbling out the Stargate when they came through, which was something to do with stellar drift. I can't remember exactly offhand, but the ice thing was just a nice little reference. Some part of the lore talks about it being like a result of them being their molecules being reassembled when they come back through, I think. Or I've read that many different interpretations. I can't.
I'm sure that's mentioned on screen by Sam. Maybe.
Okay. But the missions file attribute it to the Jeeps powering the Stargate. That's why it happened.
Okay.
And I'm like,
well, that goes back to Earth's makeshift DHD.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, talking about the Stargate, maybe a new piece of gate lore. One thing I noticed in episode 3, you know how the Kawoosh never conveniently destroys a ramp?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I was looking at the ramp, before and after the gate was activated, there was a burnt scorch mark where the event horizon had been, and it never usually burns a hole in the floor. But I thought that was just a first for that kind of thing.
I don't remember noticing that in this, I'll be honest. I always took it more as it's the Kawoosh itself that's the destructive bit, not necessarily...
Unless the floor of the ramp is already there.
Yeah. So
it distinguishes between people and floor. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was just more the direction. So, that the ramp's below the funnel, so it's not destroying it. It's...
Oh, so I guess the Kawoosh doesn't come out from the extreme borders of the gate. It's the center, isn't it? Center. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I liked the sideways shots of people going through the Stargate. It's a simple effect, but it's an effect I like. And the show didn't do it enough, in my opinion, and I just liked it in this when everybody went through it. But to talk about the cheaper nature of Origins, like, again, in terms of it's a cool concept, but not quite executed very well. Like, I also very much like shots from the back of the gate where you're looking through the event horizon at people on the other side.
Oh yeah, we get them touching the gate or approaching it, and then we get Catherine going in the water,
and it's obviously water.
Yeah, that was the movie is obviously water. Yeah, but you don't see that, and you don't have to suspend your disbelief when you watch the movie. With this, you do.
Yeah, and like there was a shot of looking through from the back of the Stargate through the event horizon, where it was like muffled sound, like they're underwater, and I was like, oh no, this is too cheap feeling, and that's a problem with the entire Origins. I think it feels like a low budget fan movie. It feels like a low budget web series, and it's things like that where cool concepts, cool ideas, nice ways to try and replicate this thing on a budget, but it betrays the fact that it's been made for 2 pieces of string and a $5 that you found in your pocket kind of vibe of the entire series. And those
here's a question. If this was a fan movie, do you think it would get high praise?
Yes. Well, execution, it might get high praise. Narrative, no. Because again, the entire thing is unnecessary. And I don't think even as a fan movie, people would be like, oh, that was really cool story that you were trying to tell. I think it might be like, I really enjoyed your attempts at recreating that kind of stuff. And it's harder now because we do live in an age where amateurs or, film students or, just fans can make really high quality fan productions. It's not it's not something we've really seen with Stargate. Stargate's had its fan films. There was...
It has. And then going back to the early 2000s, I can think of some people that made
Stargate Delta, I think, was one of the OG ones. Looks terrible in retrospect now, but for the time, it was cool. There's been some other random ones I've seen on YouTube. There was a French one. There was another one that had something to do with the Furlings, but it's not quite as prevalent as Star Wars. It's not quite as prevalent as Star Trek kind of fan films. So I'm sure we'd have appreciated those attempts as a fan film. But then when you think of things like the Alien 40th anniversary shorts, those were made on a shoestring budget and a fiver that was found in your back pocket, but they were also done as official things. And I think they are significantly better than Origins.
I was apprehensive with those, but you don't have a distaste for those the same way you do for this, with the Alien shorts. No.
I think my distaste for this comes more from it being entirely unnecessary and a waste of some Stargate content.
A quick question before we move on to the next episode. I was wondering about your thoughts on changing the detail on the gate. If we got that in the revival, you're a Star Trek fan.
I am a Star Trek fan.
So when Star Trek, the original series, was brought out in HD, well, it was originally on the other format, what was it called? HD DVD. And
where they redid the special effects.
They redid the special effects. They were very clear that they're not adding fins here and there. They're going to be totally faithful to what it was. That's great. Then we get Star Trek Discovery.
Where we get entirely different aesthetic.
Entirely different ship. And you left thinking, where does this fit? Has it had a pre-refit? What's going on? And then there's the whole behind the scenes. Is there a licensing issue with the image of it? But that aside, we dealt with it, we moved on. If we got that in Stargate and we had some major detail changes, that might piss people off with the gate itself. Do you think they'll be faithful to the TV show with the glowing chevrons and things? Yeah. I do hope they're a bit more consistent, because like with SG-1, they had a working gate in the SGC and they had a traveling gate where the ring didn't spin. So with that compromise, that kind of wrote the rules on how a gate's dialed and how it opens. Because the gate doesn't spin, you can input chevrons and just open it up. I hope the revival's a bit more consistent with how it works, whether it's on location or on set.
Well, I mean, okay, so two things here. I think they'll stick very close to the show because they made a big deal of this existing within SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe's lore. When Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich were talking about the reboot movie, people were disinterested because it was not the show. And when they announced all this stuff, SG Prime, SG UK, they went on Gate World, they announced it with those prominent fandom figures, and one of the things they made sure they said was, yes, this is the same characters, this is the same universe, this is the continuity that you have all spent 15 years in love with. The guy working on it, was a prominent figure on Atlantis. I think they will be very conscious of the fact that people would want that consistency with the older series. So it's an interesting question, isn't it? Are we gonna revisit the SG-1 world but 20 years into the future?
Yeah. And is it Adventures in the Milky Way, or are we going elsewhere? Yeah.
Are we going somewhere else so we can have yet another new fancy Stargate? And obviously that's something we'll learn later, but I do really think they'll try and maintain that sort of stuff, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah,
and the design and the aesthetic of SG-1's gate was fantastic. I suspect it was probably, again, a budgetary thing, because I don't think the movie gate's quite as detailed as the show's gate. So that could be, a budgetary thing. In terms of the rules, they work the different Stargate activation stuff into the narrative as well. So they kind of explain, that hours spins because it's wheels unlocking the ring to manually dial it every time, basically. And you kind of get that in some of the episodes off world where they have to manually dial the gate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's nice, where a little bit of that limitation of the props is worked into the lore of the universe. I always appreciate that kind of thing. I did hate them saying that they saw all the funky wormhole stuff. I can't remember if that's episode 2 or 3. Whenever they emerge.
Yeah, I'm sure Ava or one of the Nazis mentions that, and she hopes she got it on film.
On camera, yeah. Fucking hate it. That is an absolute huge bugbear of mine.
Does no one ever talk about the wormhole in the history of the show? Like the details of it?
I don't remember that being talked about in the show. You'd have comments about, that was wild or something. But
what a rush. Yeah.
Is that, is that the process of being demolecularized and remolecularized again? Is there a physical sensation as you come through that event horizon on the other side? Nobody ever talks about seeing stars or anything like that, at least as far as I can remember. Comments, please feel free to correct me. But in one of the books, there was a brief period where Fandemonium put out a bunch of stinkers, as far as I was concerned, sorry. And one of them that they did was, it was an Atlantis book where they talked about the puddle jumper rematerializing inside the wormhole, and they're riding the tunnel inside the wormhole before they come out. And I really hated that book. I really despised that little aspect of it. And hearing her say that as she came out the gate, I was like, no, they shouldn't exist in the wormhole.
Her eyeballs didn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. And that annoyed me.
So in episode 4, Catherine, Beale, and Wasif arrive on Abydos, where they fight against Asset's not servant, god.
Yeah, first prime ? Yeah.
And they meet a young Kasuf as well. Another bit of gate lore. Does this ever happen in the show? We had no chevrons alerting Kasuf that the gate was going to activate. Apart from there was a bit of a surge, which gave him a heads up, and the gate just activated. I'm not sure if it's ever happened like that before.
I mean, 1969 has and some of the Asgard stuff have the wormhole, just the event horizon just
appear.
Yeah. But I think the chevrons were still lit up. But did the chevrons light up in this? They didn't in the film.
They didn't. No.
So that might have just been a film callback. Random gate thing here in my notes is like the movie. The close-ups and rotations of the gate being dialed isn't going clockwise.
It isn't.
Yeah, so when you have a close-up on one of the chevrons locking, you have one over here, you have one over there, you have one at like 30 degrees, then you'll go to one at like 240 degrees, and then back up to 90 degrees or something like that. And that was something I noted in the movie, and it was something I saw in here. The special effects don't, the close-ups don't seem to show it going clockwise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay. Interesting. So they fight. Is it Cirquet? How do we pronounce her name?
Cirquet was how I was going.
They fight her. I liked her cool staff weapon with the crook on the end. That was cool.
Yes, I thought that was cool. Again, the mission files say that was a special gift from our set. But no, the custom staff, custom staff was pretty cool. It's like when you end up with the Sodan having their like mini staffs. I like to see that kind of customization. Fight was really shitly.
It was. They would have been slaughtered in reality.
Yeah.
Given that there was ring transporters there, and the fact that a set keeps changing outfits, do we think she's got a ship up there? I'm thinking maybe not a Hatak, but not an Alkesh or a cargo, maybe something in between.
The show does have an in between older ship show up at one point when Osiris comes back, and he they ring transport to this old thing. I think the card game actually calls it an archaic cargo ship.
Okay.
Which was, it was like that one with the fin coming out the bottom of it. So maybe ISIS has one.
If she's a scientist, she must have something like a ship. Yeah.
Mm. I hadn't really thought about the costume changes, to be honest. That's hilarious.
Yeah, she's got her outdoor clothes, and then she's got another top, but it's like a nursing bra.
No, now that you say it, yes, I remember her changing outfits. Just at the time, I'm like, no, didn't think about that.
In episode 5, Kasuf leads the new arrivals to his outpost, where they are kept prisoner. But while attempting to escape, Wasif is accidentally stabbed. They heal him with a magic stick, the Wand of Horus. And meanwhile, we learn that Aset is harboring a dangerous secret, that being the Harcesis.
The healing rod was kind of cool, but random as fuck.
This is a bit where the mission files actually contradicted the show, because the mission file says the Wand of Horus is something she's just created, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But in the journal that Catherine reads at the outpost, it clearly shows her a depiction of her thousands of years ago healing people with the wand as well.
Yeah, fair.
And I did find it interesting, jumping ahead, when Kasuf's talking to Catherine about them having Naquadah in their blood. And the mission files says they've literally got Naquadah in their blood, the Abydonians.
Because they've been mining it.
Yeah, and because of their exposure. So that's, I guess, how they were able to use the wand.
Didn't the mission file say it was intended to be used without Naquadah in the blood, though?
Wasn't it?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, obviously we've seen healing devices in the show. You know, we've seen the handheld healing device that Kendra used and Sam used again. So there is precedence for it. I suppose maybe it was one of those ways to show that she was different. You know, she wasn't ruling with an iron fist like Ra does. Again, the mission files go into so much more detail about her being opposed to Ra and deliberately doing things to...
It also says these little outposts were her little experiments as well.
Yes, yeah.
So not just acts of kindness, maybe.
You're true. So social experiments of what she was doing. Prop again. Look shit. £5 in your pockets and a piece of string budget. Very much on
locations were great though. The visuals in the desert.
Yeah, that was somewhere in LA. I think they said they shot that.
Really? Okay. When we spoke last in the last episode, you said that Ra and Anubis had an interesting dynamic in the scripts.
Mm-hmm.
And that reminded me of this when Aset and Serket have an interesting dynamic as well. Yeah. Reminded me of that.
Yeah, I did enjoy their attempts to do something different, to be complicated, to be complex in how they approached each other. You know, I was very confused as to if Serket was supposed to be a Jafar or a Gould. And I think that was primarily, like we said earlier, the eye effect. And did the mission file say she was a Jafar? I can't remember.
No, well, the mission files do talk about Jafar. Well, Serket, I'm sure. Well, she is a Gould because does she ever speak or growl?
I'm sure she does a lot of growling.
Yeah, I presumed she was a Gould, and maybe the midwife character maybe was like a Lotar, like a human servant.
Mm-hmm.
But the mission files talks about Jafar when Ra arrives, and he's using the hand device to turn Wasif and Mortok into his servants. And Ra is mind control of them because he finds the Jafar are hard to control. This is an interesting point because if Ra is using human servants, this like retroactively reestablishes Ra's servants in the movie within the SG-1 continuity as human.
To be fair, Children of the Gods does say that there was no Jafar on Abydos.
Okay.
Yeah, so when they see, depending on which version you watched, I'm sure we'll talk about this next episode, because I saw 3 different versions of the pilot episode over the years. 4 different versions of the pilots over the years. But yeah, in the one that I imagine most people will have seen, there's a scene where there's the Jafar that they've shot dead on the slab, and you see the pouches, and they're explaining the whole marsupial thing. And Jack says there were no creatures like this on Abydos. So I think firmly, yes, as far as SG-1's concerned, Ra did have human guards.
Okay.
Although I've also got we might have moved past this, sorry, but I just want to mention it while we're talking about Horus and Anubis. The shadow scene of Wasif getting taken out, when they come through, was a nice callback to Horus and Anubis in the film, because that first scene's like, a much more horror vibed scene where you see a lot of the shadows on the walls. They don't actually show the creatures or the helmets or anything like that. So I did actually like that in this.
In episode 6, an unlikely alliance is formed between Brooker and Aset as he demonstrates the strength of the Nazis with the films that he's brought.
That whole aspect was interesting. And I think this is where Origins, I think, did show a little bit of thematic strength in terms of both use propaganda. Aset uses propaganda, and obviously the Nazis use propaganda. So her whole thing of, like the healing rod, the story that was told at the outpost, it's all propaganda of why she is a benevolent god and loving, and everybody should worship her and not cause issues. Whereas we flip across to the Nazis, where their entire rise of power was based on propaganda, their ability to manipulate the German population at the time. And I thought that was an interesting little parallel there, but it was also interesting in that the Nazis are really the bad guys in the show. Nazis are really the bad guys in life, but when you contrast them to the Gould, Aset's not overtly the villain of Origins.
No.
And that little parallel in the propaganda of how they were presenting themselves was a cool little bit of thematic strength, I thought.
Mm-hmm. It was interesting seeing them at opposite ends of the room. We had a bit of comedy there with Cirquette putting the staff weapon in front of the projector as well.
That was a little bit of levity that worked quite nicely. Can I tell you about another annoyance?
Oh, go on then. Is it the laugh?
No, it's Nagada. Why the fuck they insisted on calling Nakwada Nagada in the show?
Okay.
That is about this scene, isn't this episode, isn't it? Where
it's coming up, possibly it's in the next episode, I think.
Right. Okay.
So Aset presents a trade. Brooker's going to provide slaves. She's going to provide Nagada, which is this raw element that gives the Gould their power, which is actually Nakwada. Now, Nagada was an ancient Egyptian city,
which is what the city on Abydos was called in the wider lore. So it was in the book and in the script.
In the book, the soundtrack. And Kasuf does mention that in this. He says Nagada, the city.
Yeah.
But he also, in that same scene, when he points out the city, he talks about the mineral as Nakwada, and it's subtitled as that on screen.
It right in the subtitles, yes. Yeah. It was so infuriating to me because...
Is it just Aset's pronunciation? Messing with things.
No. Does he pronounce it Nakwada? I thought he pronounced it Nagada as well, but it's spelled correctly in the subtitles. At least that's what my notes say. That is, somebody really fucked up the lore there.
Were they just trying to be a bit clever, linking it to Nagada Nagada?
I don't know.
They messed it up.
It's a shame to me because Stargate Command was heavily involved in the show. they had law consultants involved in the production of this. I forget his second name, but somebody called Kieran, who was a big part of Stargate Command. He was producing like all the interviews that were a big thing of Stargate Command, where they're like, look, you can go watch all these old shows and movies and everything, but we're going to do this big interview series. I think did they call it Dialing the Gate or something like that? I can't remember what they called it, but he was there doing that with David Reed, and he was the one, Kieran something was the one writing all those mission files. Those mission files that are absolutely full of wide-reaching lore that is absolutely not in the film. And this big part of the background of the series, Naquadah, is fucked up so royally. And I know it's only pronunciation. It might seem like something little, but it's an important aspect of the franchise.
Yeah, and everyone in the galaxy knows Naquadah. Even when Jonas mentions Naquadria, they're like, you mean Naquadah? And he's like, no, we've got that as well.
Yeah.
Like, even in isolated cultures, they know it as Naquadah, yeah.
So it's a small thing, but it's a big thing. And it's one of those little elements where it's like, are you sure you know Stargate? Are you sure you want to be making something set in this universe if you're getting this wrong? So it's it's one of those fan nitpicky things, but it's a big pick.
So that happens in episode 7, and we get a bit of a backstory to our set in the outpost, in Kasuf's outpost, which is called Nosdevli.
Nosdev. Which is one of the writers' names backwards.
Oh, brilliant.
Mark Ilvidson. It's Ilvidson backwards.
I thought it was phonetically wrong as a word. It's just a made-up thing. Okay. So they put on a bit of a show in the outpost. Long ago, Aset fell from Ra's favor. Now Ra has resurrected Aset and given her power to watch over us. The power to heal was gifted to us by our goddess, the Wand of Horus, and we reward Aset with great loyalty. That's the short version of the story.
Go read the mission files for the long version, yeah.
I've got a segment here from the mission files which talks about the wand. About Aset utilizing similar technology seen in a sarcophagus to enable those without high levels of Naquadah in their blood to heal wounds in the field. The end use for such a technology was actually for a new military force that Aset had been planning, but gifting a prototype to her tribespeople served a dual purpose.
Interesting concept.
So, episode 8, we get the duel between one of the Abydonians and one of the Nazis. It's interesting seeing Aset in this setting because she's got this position of power that she needs to maintain. She needs to trade with Brooker. So she needs to change her tone with the Abydonians, and she pits one of them in a fight, and it's someone who's killed, and she sheds a tear, doesn't she?
Nice little way to be like, yeah, she is different, but it's very shorthand. It's not really explored in the show at all. But to be fair, that part does go forward well in, again, emphasizing that Brooker and the Nazis are actually the baddies, where the Nazi loses the duel and Brooker's, like, nope, you're not killing my dude, pulls out his gun and cheats.
Did he break his knee as well? He stepped on his knee, and then he said he would have held us back or slowed us down, yeah.
So even though Brooker even though Brooker kills the Abydonian to prevent his guy losing the duel, he then executes his own guy anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Needless violence, as we also associate the Nazis with. Well, it's probably not needless violence, is it, to them, because it was experiments to them as well. But it's depicting again the cruelty of Brooker.
Catherine and Kasuf have an interesting chat. It's right after the Naquada chat that you hate. On Earth, she says that the gods don't usually walk with the people, and he's quite sorry about that because he believes the gods still love her. So she's cautiously telling him that your gods are fake. But she kind of takes a step back when he's quite humble and dismissive of that.
It's an interesting scene. And I think it's probably one of the stronger scenes from the film, from the show, however we want to call it, from Origins. Because, science fiction is a good place to pose these questions and to put forward these different sides of these different arguments without really always offering an answer. I think SG-1's a lot more straightforward in it, gold bad, humans good, America good kind of approach to it. But it was an interesting scene here because Origins does try and show us that Outset is a little different. We get her shed the tear over the guy, the Abydonian being killed. So as far as Origins is concerned, yes, Outset is probably the benevolent lord that she is being shown to be. So when Kasuf's like, yeah, but she's nice to us. How nice is it that we've got this healing tool? How nice is it that she actually walks amongst us and our faith is in something material in front of us as far as we're concerned?
And they don't feel like slaves.
It's not like what we see in the film where the Horus Guards show up and are whipping all the Abydonians and everything like that. So, it's a very interesting question of faith or religion, because maybe to them it's not faith because it's material in front of them. Like I said, they have the wand of Horus. They have Outset in the village amongst them. It is a material thing. It is not faith. Faith is requiring a belief in something that is not imperial evidence in front of you. It's not something tangible. So it's a very interesting sort of thought experiment, an interesting debate in terms of religion and belief.
Kasuf could probably have the same argument towards us. Like, how do you know? You can't see it. Yeah. But, yeah.
Were you confused over his importance in the show?
Kasuf's?
Yeah.
Like, as a character to the story, or do you mean his position in the society?
In the society.
So he says it's his outpost, but you could interpret that as that's where he's stationed or whether he's in charge, because the gods don't treat him like a leader. So that's where I was a bit confused.
I had the exact same confusion as you, Rob. Exactly for those reasons. Him saying, this is my thing. We know him as obviously the elder from the movie. And then, I mean, the mission files clarify it all, don't they? They very explicitly spell out that he is a low-ranking guy, and of course he is, because he's mopping up the Stargate, and the guards are mean to him. But then it's also the question of, if he's a low-ranking person, how is Outset just telling him, go and be a leader, go to the city and take over? How is that a realistic thing?
So he's brainwashed to weasel his way up to the top. That's what we know now.
So,
what did you think of the cartouche that we find in the caves?
I got a smile out of this, I'm going to be honest. So, I grinned because it was the Earth's address from the show. So it wasn't the address from the movie, which we never really see clearly.
Oh, right, I didn't get that. Okay.
So, yeah, they're different because, of course, in the film, the
symbols are different. Yeah, got you. Yeah. Okay.
But you never really see it clearly on the cartouche in the movie. But in Origins, it is Earth's address, as we can quite clearly see it throughout the series' history. I like that. I love that. I thought that was cute. I also thought it was cute to see the point of origin of Abydos. You do see that in the pilot episode of SG-1. It's a little different interpretation of it, because I think in Origins it was very much just the pyramid with the circles, whereas in the show it's the pyramid with like a line with another line on the top of it, and then the moons are like little triangles. You'll see it when you rewatch it next for the next episode.
Okay,
it's when Ferretti's showing them the address to Chulak, and it shows it then.
Got it. Okay.
So I thought that was cute, but then it also, Robin, it reminded me of something that really irritates me in fandom.
And what's that?
And that is people getting tattoos of Earth's address and then putting Earth's point of origin on the end of that address. That is something I see so common. It makes me feel like a jackass because I'm instantly like that. Actually, the comic book guy from Simpsons, because we should all know that would mean we get a busy signal and that it would not engage. So it winds me up when I see people get tattoos of Earth's address with the point of origin on the end of it.
Right. Oh man, I would probably go for Abydos' address because that's more familiar to me.
Iconic, yeah. The same. I would love a tattoo. I'm terrified of needles.
You got none.
I've got none, but I would love, like you said, the Abydos address with the cartouche detailings, and I'd love something alien, but I'm just too scared. I sometimes think about getting Earth's point of origin just somewhere.
Go for it.
Small, so I can sort of get a feel of what it actually feels like to have a tattoo. Do you have any?
I haven't got any in a long time. On my leg, I've got the Warhammer 40,000 eagle, the double-headed eagle.
Mm.
And I've got one more on my arm here. I don't know if you can see it there. So that is the Seal of Rassilon from Doctor Who.
Okay,
And around it is a snake eating its tail.
Oberos.
Which reminds me a little bit of Red Dwarf, X-Files Millennium. It's like a little nod to things I like. Weirdly enough, that Oberos tattoo did feature in Doctor Who after I got it. For anyone who doesn't know, I did do a Doctor Who podcast for 7 years as well. So that's another thing I love.
There is a Stargate book called Oberos, and that is a I think another alternate universe one where SG-1 ends up in Ethosia. Somehow, I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've read it. But yeah, SG-1 ends up in Atlantis somehow, or in Pegasus somehow, in an alternate universe. I don't know if I liked Catherine kicking off the point of origin though, on the cartouche, because it's kind of in the film. It's a nice little extension of the lost history, the forbidden history. And don't get me wrong, I understand Catherine's mentality, justification in the show in Origins, where she's like, oh, but if we do this, the Nazis won't be able to get back. And I understand it, but I also, and it's a critique of the film as well, actually. If you've got 6 symbols, just try one of every other symbol and see what happens. Mm-hmm. Although I suppose in the film it kind of says maybe it can turn on if you do the wrong thing. I don't know. Within the logic of SG-1, it wouldn't work, and the one that worked was the correct one, so it would be trial and error. But maybe that's adding a bit too much logic into the sci-fi, into the fiction.
Do you watch the movie now and think that was Catherine that kicked that off, or do you?
No. Once Origins is a fun little student movie that somebody made, but it's fan fiction, as far as I'm concerned.
Would you be bothered if they contradicted it with a throwaway line, not even thinking somewhere down the line?
Not in the slightest. I imagine that Giro knows, that Martin Giro, who's showrunning the new one, knows about the reception to Origins. That was always a thing about the powers that be that made the Stargate series. They were tapped into online fandom. It was an age in which these creatives would go and interact with fans. Joe Malozzi, who did a lot of SG-1, and the universe. I don't think he really worked on Atlantis, if I remember correctly. But he used to run a blog, and that used to be one of the weekly things that fans liked. Was after an episode had come out, they'd go and read Joe's blog for whatever behind the scenes insights that he offered, and those guys were really tapped into it. Gateworld had a lot of access to them. So I think they would be very much aware of the generally disappointed reaction to Origins. So I would not be surprised in the slightest if they were like, fuck them. I think they may have already said in some of the random sort of catch-up chats that Gateworld has had with them.
So Asset gives Paul Langford Catherine's hairpin that was discovered at the start of the story. It's an interesting piece of the story that was kind of long-winded. We see it at the start, and it's carried through. We see it at the end, and the payoff is just a small scene. But I don't know. I guess it wasn't that significant.
But I guess it's just Paul realizing that there's more stakes at the minute. At that point, he'd only had to be concerned with himself, and I guess this alliance of bad guys going off in front of him. And it's when he sees this pin that he sort of steps up and then tries to convince Outset that Brooker is going to betray her. I
loved the interactions at this point because Paul is acting as a translator until he's not. And Paul's saying how dangerous Brooker is.
Yeah, I enjoyed that little bit of interaction as well. Yeah.
This brings us on to episode 10 as Ra's ship is arriving. After Catherine and Beale kiss, so do Motok and Wasif. Any thoughts on that subplot with Wasif? There is one mega payoff to that subplot, which I'll get to, but I want to hear your thoughts.
In the irony of them staying?
No.
No? Okay. Yeah, it's like we were saying earlier, I don't have a particular issue with romance in stuff. It's just all very fast. Obviously Wasif's sort of hinted throughout the movie, throughout the web series, that there's more to him than Beale necessarily knows about, and obviously this is the fact that he's gay, which at the time is, socially not acceptable and all that kind of horrible history of us.
If they had a bit more time, they probably could have dealt with Beale's reaction to that a bit better.
I mean, he didn't come across as a jerk about it all, though, did it? They didn't sort of lean into that 1930s cultural behaviour to him. It was more of a friend accepting a friend kind of thing. But it's the same in how I don't like that Beale takes a staff blast or gives his life for this woman that he's kind of been courting for 2 weeks.
It's all a tragic end to both the romances, yeah.
But it's the same in Wasif and I can't remember the Abydonian's name.
Motok. It's spelt one way on the wiki pages, and in the subtitles and on Amazon Prime and IMDb, it's spelt a different way in the mission files. Sorry, yeah.
Okay. So it's the same thing there where they've known each other for a day, and Wasif doesn't even speak the same language. They've not communicated, and he's already there, like ready to just stay behind on Abydos. But then is that something to do with the cultural behavior back home in how people treat, gay folk back then? But that behavior is not presented in any of the characters.
No.
In the film, so it's all part of that truncated aspect of romance that I don't like in fiction.
I think it needed a bit more breathing space, especially with Wasif being Egyptian. There would have been a lot more cultural stigma,
cultural stuff. Yeah. Not just the 1930s, but yeah, the whole Egyptian aspect of the culture as well. But I like the dark tragedy of it. Of him never leaving Abydos. Well, no, he does leave Abydos. Of him never returning to Earth. Of him being with Motok for, as long as they are until 1994 or 1966, whatever it is.
Do you suppose Wasif is the same jackal god in the movie?
That's the implication.
Kept alive and kept young.
Maybe, well, yeah,
Maybe.
I suppose.
Maybe.
If they're popping him in the sarcophagus, they actually weren't supposed to originally going to be Anubis and Horus either.
Really? Okay.
So in the earliest or earlier drafts of Stargate Origins, there was actually a bunch of extra characters that came along. There was extra a couple of extra Nazis who came along, and that was going to be Horus and Anubis, because the whole thing of Brooker being like, "Hey, we've got all these slaves, aka Holocaust victims, that we can give you to be an alliance," and then he was also going to be like, "Here, have some Nazis too," and it was going to be those guys who were offered out to our set that then got turned into Anubis and Horus. And there was also going to be Kasuf's father was going to be in the earliest drafts of the series as well, but they got rid of a bunch of these surplus characters to bring the costs down, less cast.
Probably for the best, yeah.
Yeah.
After that scene where Catherine and Beale embrace, Wasif and Motak embrace, my favourite thing is Kasuf's in the middle, and he just says, "What the fuck? Come on." It's actually subtitled that way.
I can't remember that. I'm not going to lie, I can't remember that.
I thought it was the biggest payoff to the whole thing. Go watch it again. Kasuf just stands there and he hesitates, then he says, "What the fuck?"
What's with this inappropriate moment taken for romance in this very dramatic and life-threatening situation? That's funny. I like that.
In the mission files, it's mentioned that Ra couldn't risk conquering Earth right now because of the current state of affairs with the Asgard and System Lords. So it mentions that as Aset didn't expect him to return for a few more years, he was busy with their other struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Bit of a parallel with the looming war on Earth.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. That's a fair point. The wider lore does a better job of filling in that sort of period of Stargate history. The old RPG. Alderon, somebody like that. I can't remember who it was. I never got the old RPG, but they did a bunch of sort of like lore books that talked about like all that kind of stuff, like the System Lords fights with the Asgard in that earlier pre-show time period was something that was talked about in there, and I appreciated it in the mission files as well.
I quite liked the Jackal and the Horus masks, well, and the Ra mask actually, because fans do a great job at making these things, but sometimes they're badly proportioned. And I feel like, given the nature of this production, I thought it was all right.
I actually didn't like them,
but I didn't think they looked radically different.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. It was all part of that fan film aspect to me. It felt like a fan produced thing. And I don't want people to think, I'm using that as a derogatory thing, because there's some fantastic fan costumes out there, isn't it? And reproductions of that kind of thing. It didn't feel anywhere near as on the scope of Patrick Totopoulos' constructions from the first film. I just did not like Ra's mask at all. And it makes me sad because, like I said in the previous episode, I just really love Ra, and I love to see Ra come back, even his brief little stupid cameos that we see him in the show where he doesn't get much to do. But in this one, I was just like, oh, this is so bad. It looks so cheap.
I know, it's a shame we didn't have him more. Like, we got him in Mobius Part 2, 1.
1, yeah. Did you know the DHD was actually the one from the series?
I didn't know that, but I assumed as much because it looked quite good.
So it was an actual prop from the series that I forget which fan it is, and I'm sorry, because there was a couple of collectors that I follow on Facebook, 2 very prominent ones, and I can't remember which one it was. There's Atlante Props and another guy who's got a lot of stuff and makes molds, and one of those guys lent the production the DHD, the prop that he had, the screen use prop that he had, they repainted it.
Oh, really?
For Origins, and it was a ball ache for him to get it back, and it came back in a right state.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I was really disappointed to see that, because production's being able to rely on fans for that kind of goodwill behavior. He sent them that DHD out of his pocket. It's great for productions to have us as a resource for those kind of things, because obviously the props aren't able to be stored in, you know, an MGM vault for eternity, and it's a great opportunity to fans to have them for their own collections, and it's a great opportunity and honor, and it adds a little bit of extra story to that prop to say, yes, I gave it back to them, it showed up in this production, and now it's again back in my own my collection. But for him to have it back in a terrible state is piss poor behavior.
Merely for Stargate Origins as well.
Yeah.
Like, I can understand, I think the Sulaco was repainted for Alien 3, the alien Queen head was repainted for Resurrection, and those are other instances of fans having things that get changed. But yeah, in this instance, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I guess this brings us on to final thoughts and conclusion.
I heard that sigh there, Robbie. You're leaving that in the edit?
Absolutely. So, Origin takes elements from both the movie and the series. You could say it fits in its own little bubble. We could leave it there. Would that be a fair assessment?
It is an alternate universe that they could have found in the quantum mirror that was soon erased for some reason and never returned to.
Perfect. It's been an interesting discussion.
We haven't talked about the mind wipe, though.
We're going to wipe our minds of this.
No, the mind wipe way that the show deals with the contradiction. Because, yeah, it would be nice to have that mind wipe. To forget Origins happened, he says, having watched it 4 times in the last 8 years. So, Outset uses the hand device on the Langfords, on Kasuf, to wipe their minds and give them instructions on what they should do. And it's just so... She directs Catherine to come back, to reopen the Stargate, to assemble a team, to go stick it to Ra. And Kasuf is motivated to go back to Nagada, and become a leader. And she tell him to sow rebellion. I can't really remember. I tend to sort of tune out of the film at that point.
It really betrays these strong characters. Kasuf was a strong leader. Catherine was a very interesting character. She knew she had a directive and she knew what she wanted to do. It was her father's discovery. In Origins, we have a different interpretation. Catherine knows what she wants to do. She wants to leave her father's shadow, work in the museum in Cairo,
which is at the start of the series, at the start of the film.
And then Asset takes that ambition away from her.
The whole idea of the mind wipe and those directive removes those characters' agency. You know, it removes their strength and determination as we see them in the film and to some extent in the show. But they had to do something to make this stupid prequel work. So, of course, they had to have their memories erased somehow. Otherwise, this, again, stupid prequel could not fit within the continuity, which is what they wanted to do.
A lot of the criticism before it came out was that actual matter.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I remember thinking, of course they'll have their memory wiped. But a lot of people weren't making that assumption, and they were saying, this is stupid, how does she not remember?
Yeah. Of course they were going to have it wiped. There was no other way it was going to work. But the problem is, it is so fan fiction. It is so 15-year-old writing his first piece or her first piece of fan fiction about Stargate. And it's
I can imagine myself writing this at 15 thinking this is absolute fucking
absolutely
gold.
See, the annoying fucking thing, though, is it works. You know, Forever in a Day shows us that there is this mental component of the hand device, and that there is this, you know, Forever in a Day does it as this other thing, you know, where it's the host sending a message through a dream, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, there is this mental component. There is this ability to affect the mind. The mission files go into it more as well, where they talk about Outset and her creating the technology and her working on that sort of like mental component. The early intention, though, was that both Langfords were going to fall from a great height, are healed, and lose their memory during the healing process.
So mortally wounded.
Yeah, and they're healed by some. I can't remember what they said in the interviews, but whether it was the wand of Horus or some other process. But yeah, basically their minds are wiped during the healing process, and they decided we can't have them both have amnesia from a fall. Beale was going to survive. He was going to make it back, and he was going to keep quiet, because the film, the show, sets up him being like, oh, I don't know if people need to know about this kind of behavior of the treatment of what militaries, what governments will use the Stargate for. So they sort of set that up. And I think they filmed two versions, one where he takes the shot in the back and one where he goes back with them and has to be quiet. Or they wrote two. I can't remember if they filmed them both.
You know what would have been an interesting ending? If she had gave them the Harcesis, and then the Harcesis was like on Earth and hiding. And where does that lead?
They've also forgot about it.
Yeah, they forgot about it. Or maybe the Harcesis doesn't know it's a Harcesis, and it's a character. It's General Hammond or something.
It'd have to, since it has all the knowledge.
Unless it was wiped.
Yeah, unless she wipes it too.
Yeah.
So
oh god,
it's just so unnecessary. This whole fucking thing is I don't. You know, I said during the initial episode there is no thing I actively hate or despise, and you know, we go from the film, which I think is underappreciated and I really love, to this where it's tested my my fortitude of that statement. Now, I don't hate Origins. I don't hate it. There is things in it that I enjoy, but it is absolutely one I do not particularly ever want to rewatch. You know, I've said I've seen it 4 times. That is probably excessive for a thing that I don't particularly want to watch. But I watched it when it came out because it was the first new Stargate content in 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it when the movie came out. The movie cut came out just out of morbid curiosity to see how it was different. I watched it once. It might have been this year, to be fair, or last year, where I was like, oh, I haven't watched Origins for a long time. I saw it show up on like Prime, and I was like, oh, I haven't watched that for a long time. I wonder if it's as poor as I remember it to be. So I watched it, and then I watched it once in preparation for this episode. So yeah, 4 times is probably a bit excessive for something I don't like. But when you compare that to the episodes and the film and the series that I have watched, I can't even count how many times.
Mm-hmm. Not just rewatches, but casually watch them on TV as well. You see it so much.
When I go to a hotel, when I go away with work, or we're going to a convention or something like that, when I get in that hotel room and it's shit telly, I look for like Sky Atlantic or one of the other, you know, crappy cable satellite shows.
Yeah. What's embarrassing is I'm sure Sky has broadcast this, not just streamed it, not just put it on the streaming.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because I remember it caught up on my recordings once, and I thought they actually put this on live TV.
Okay, yeah, I had no idea about that. But no, my point was, when I'm in hotels, I go look for the Sky show because I know SG1 and Atlantis is going to be on one of those channels if I've caught it at the right time. So, you know, I will go watch those casually as well, as much as just doing a full-on proper rewatch. And Origins, as much as I can't say I hate it because there are minor little things in it that bring me a smile, it is a mistake. It is a misfire because it was a cool concept. In the idea of them doing cheaper web shows is fine. You know, we had a big drought. It had been 8 years, but the way they chose to try and, you know, Origins was supposed to be the start of new sort of regular content on this hub, on this new streaming service. But they chose a stupid concept. They chose an unnecessary story to tell that results in these really bad amateur fanficky feel moments to shoehorn it into the continuity. And that is ultimately just how I feel about Origins. The mission files are more interesting an experience than the show.
I was really surprised. I loved reading that. 60 pages of extra info and lore. It was good.
And it was just more entertaining than the film, the show, which is a shame because, like, I didn't actively dislike any of the cast. I didn't think it was the prettiest looking film. You know, the cinematography is not exactly setting the world on fire, but the cast I enjoyed. And when you listen to any of the interviews with the people, there is a genuine passion for Stargate from them, even from the writers, even from the director. You know, there was genuine sort of interest and hope in what they were doing, but it was just
somewhere down the line it didn't work. Yeah,
it was just so poorly put together at the end of it, and it's a shame we never got the Braytak and Tilk ones, and instead we got this poor piece of fan fiction that was just not required.
Well, I love how much this has wound you up. So I think I've got a new objective for the podcast. I want to find something. This doesn't count. I'll let it slide. But I want to find a piece of Stargate that you absolutely hate.
Okay, let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to preface this and say Emancipation does not enrage me like I know it does a lot of fans.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll see. We're a few episodes off that. I did
like, sorry, so speaking on the cast, I did like that Ellie Gal, who played Catherine in this, looked kind of like the younger Catherine from Torment of Tantalus.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm sure that wasn't intentional or anything, but yeah, I thought that was funny. And I liked that the OG child Catherine got a cameo at the end of the film, the end of the series. Who played the woman who would come to collect the Stargate on behalf of the government.
Oh, right. Sorry, I didn't know that.
Yes. So that is the girl, Katharina, from the Stargate movie, which was nice. A cool little moment.
Needs another rewatch? Nah.
I have another note here actually about Serket. She was originally Anubis in the treatment for the series.
Right. Okay.
In the treatment, not in the script. So very early on in the production. Just so you can appreciate the prep that I put into this thing that I think is a misfire and a mistake. You know, I did go and re-listen to all like Gate World's interviews, and I did go and try and find like all the interviews and stuff with that the cast and crew had done. So I did subject myself to more knowledge of this production. And yeah, so there was some good stuff about the earlier concepts in their interviews.
So this has been really fun, but I feel like these past 3 episodes, it feels like just the prelude to the podcast, because we can finally start SG1 in the next episode and make a start. So if anyone wants to connect with us and discover more, you can visit chevron7locked.co.uk. And we've started this podcast with a bit of a mission objective. So we're going to regroup on the 30th anniversary of SG1, and we're hoping to have reached Within the Serpent's Grasp. That's our little goal. We'll see if we make it or not.
I really hope we do. I know what podcast production is like. I know what podcast editing is like. I know what recording scheduling is like. So fingers crossed that we hit that goal.
Yeah. So are you excited for Children of the Gods?
I am, actually, because I sent you the script, didn't I?
I don't know. Maybe
Okay,
you did, maybe you didn't.
Double check, because I've never actually read the original script for Children of the Gods, so it's going to be a nice little bit of me diving and expanding my knowledge of Stargate on this.
Okay, and that might diverge a bit from the final product, yeah?
Yeah, a little bit. So Gateworld had access to this years ago and did an article, but they never published the script, so they just did an article on it. I've managed to get my hands on that script.
Great.
And I read a good 20 pages on the train about a month ago, and I was like, no, Aaron, stop reading this. You need to be able to take notes, and you don't want to confuse your memory before you do the next recording. So I'm looking forward to actually getting to sit down and go through it. I'm looking forward to talking about the 4 different versions that I've seen.
Okay, I'm interested to see which versions they are, because I believe I've seen 4 versions, but we'll talk about that.
It's broadcast editing, isn't it? And that sort of stuff. But yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. You know, it's going to be fun diving into SG1 for the foreseeable.
Indeed. So we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks and goodbye.
Close the iris.